Clint Eastwood is the embodiment of raw power, cowboy charm, and true masculinity. When we think of his garage, we immediately imagine powerful American muscle cars or luxurious retro cars. But, somehow, among all this splendor, there are cars that just don't fit his image at all. For example, the Fiat 500. Yes, that very small Italian hatchback, which is more associated with the narrow streets of Rome than with an American action hero. Another surprise is the Toyota Prius. Remember Clint Eastwood as Harry Callahan, the tough cop ready to take down criminals with just a glance. And now imagine him leisurely driving a hybrid Prius around Los Angeles. It sounds strange, but this car was indeed in his collection. Why did he have such cars? Maybe he just loves convenience. Or do they have their own unique story? One thing is certain, these are not the last unexpected surprises in his garage. If you were asked to guess which car a Hollywood star would choose, you would probably think of a Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, or at the very least some classic Mustang. But Clint Eastwood once made a completely unpredictable choice. He bought a GMC Typhoon. At first glance, it's an ordinary SUV, resembling a workhorse. But if you dig deeper, it was one of the fastest SUVs of its time. Under the hood, it has a 6-cylinder turbo engine capable of accelerating the car faster than many sports cars of that era. But why the Typhoon? Perhaps Eastwood wanted something less pretentious, yet with excellent performance. Or maybe he just liked defying expectations. In any case, this choice seems much more logical than his next experiment. When you think of Clint Eastwood, a vintage Dodge Charger or a muscular Ford Mustang comes to mind, but certainly not an electric car. Nevertheless, a Tesla Roadster, the first sports car from Elon Musk that took the market by storm, once appeared in his garage. This car surprised everyone, both Eastwood fans and the automotive community. How could a man who embodies the classic American spirit in his films be interested in something so technological and modern? Perhaps he was attracted. The incredible dynamics of the Tesla Roadster, accelerating to 60 miles per hour in 4 seconds. But did he remain the owner of this car for long? Alas, no. It's said that Eastwood didn't appreciate the quiet ride and the lack of engine roar. Too unusual after all those years with a muscle car. He quickly parted with this car, but the very fact that he even had a Tesla is already shocking. If you think that a Prius, Fiat 500, and an electric car are already too much, then wait. The most unexpected acquisition of Clint Eastwood can be considered the Morris Mini Traveler. Yes, the very British minivan with wooden inserts on the body, which looks like a toy car. What made the Hollywood legend buy such a car? It's quite possible it was a gift. Or the car had a special story. But the fact remains, this little guy was indeed in his garage. What is it like to see the tough Clint behind the wheel of a small British minivan? It's hard to even imagine, but it's equally interesting to find out which cars he had that were connected to his movies. For actors, it's completely normal to take home props after filming. But Clint Eastwood went further. He took home the cars that appeared in his movies. One of the most famous cases is the Gran Torino. After filming the movie of the same name, released in the 2000s, he kept the legendary Ford Gran Torino, produced in the 70s. This car became a central element of the film, and Eastwood simply couldn't part with it. But this isn't the only car he took home after filming. Even earlier, after the movie Dirty Harry, he took home a luxurious Pontiac Grand Prix created in the 70s from the set. It's hard to say whether it was his personal whim or if he was truly captivated by the cars from his films. But one thing is certain, he didn't just play a driver of cool cars, he genuinely admired them. Clint Eastwood has always been a fan of true American muscle cars. These cars, yes, are the embodiment of power, raw strength, and old-school chic. His collection includes true legends that make car enthusiasts' hearts race. One of the most iconic cars he owned was the Ford Mustang Shelby GT350, released in the 60s. This beast combined classic style and insane speed, and Eastwood clearly knew a thing or two about such cars. Another gem in his garage is the Dodge Charger, also from the 60s. If there was a car in his life that perfectly reflected his on-screen persona, it would be the Charger. Massive, powerful, and commanding respect on the road, But despite his love for classics, Eastwood didn't limit himself to just American cars. There was also room in his garage for something more refined. One might assume that Clint Eastwood is a patriot to the core, and there's no room for foreign brands in his garage. But that's not the case. He had several European supercars that clearly stood out from his usual fleet. For example, a Ferrari 275 GTB, released in the 60s. This car was considered one of the best in the history of the Italian brand and was a true work of art. You might think Ferrari is for young, hot-headed millionaires, but Clint had a taste for classics and appreciated this car for its exceptional style. Additionally, he had a Jaguar XTS50, a British roadster that combined luxury and a sporty spirit. Such a choice is truly surprising. You might wonder why someone accustomed to powerful American cars would choose an elegant Jaguar. But apparently, Eastwood had a unique perspective on cars, and he valued them not only for their power but also for their character. When you have an unlimited budget, you can afford not just to buy a car, but to create one tailored to yourself. Clint Eastwood once took advantage of this opportunity, and the result was a Lincoln Continental Mark V, modified to his specifications. What was special about it? First, it had a fully custom interior, handcrafted to meet his preferences. Second, Eastwood wanted to alter the engine specifications to make it even more powerful. And finally, a rare two-tone paint job that you won't find anywhere else. This was a car, reflecting his style, solid, powerful, and exclusive. But there were also cars in his garage with astronomical prices. Some of Clint Eastwood's cars can be considered automotive works of art. One such car is the Ferrari 365 GT4BB, released in the 70s. This model became legendary among collectors, and Eastwood didn't miss the chance to acquire one. But Clint once made an unexpected decision. He sold his Ferrari 365 GT4BB, which might have made him part with one of the most prestigious cars in the world. According to Eastwood himself, he simply didn't like attracting attention. For a person who was accustomed to a style of understated luxury, such a car was too extravagant. Another masterpiece, the Auburn 8051 Bobtail Speedster, is a chic retro car from the 30s that literally breathes history. This beauty with a long hood and elegant lines is a true gem in his collection. However, he also had cars that became not just transportation, but a part of his personality. One of these was his favorite SUV. Despite all his love for classic muscle cars, luxurious supercars, and custom projects, Clint Eastwood couldn't do without a reliable SUV. His favorite became the GMC Yukon, which he used for many years. Why the Yukon? First of all, it's a powerful and reliable vehicle, perfect for trips out of town or on mountain roads. Secondly, it doesn't scream wealth and status, yet remains comfortable and spacious. And finally, Eastwood always valued practicality, and the Yukon perfectly met his needs. This vehicle became not just a means of transportation for him, but a true companion in everyday life. However, few people know which car marked the beginning of his story as a driver. Before Clint Eastwood became a global celebrity, he had a completely different approach to choosing cars. In his youth, he drove not luxurious cars, but what he could afford. One of the first cars he owned was a Ford Model T, a true symbol of the American auto industry. Of course, by the time Eastwood acquired it, the car was already vintage, but he appreciated it for its simplicity, reliability, and spirit of freedom. Later, when his career took off, he replaced that retro car with a Chevrolet Fleetline, released in the 40s. It was a car with a more elegant and modern design, but still far from those luxurious models that he acquired later. However, there was one special car in his collection that no one knew about for a long time. Clint Eastwood was never one to boast about his car collection. But among his cars, there was a truly secret model that almost no one knew about. This car was a Hudson Hornet, a classic American sedan that was a racing legend in the 50s. This car remained in the shadow of Eastwood's other, more high-profile purchases for a long time. But the actor himself cherished it as one of the most valuable in his collection. In any case, the Hudson Hornet is the final touch in Clint Eastwood's shocking collection, which turned out to be much more unexpected than one could imagine. Not all the cars that made it into Clint Eastwood's garage stayed with him for long. There were some that could have become his favorites, but something went wrong. One such car was the Plymouth Hemi-Cuda, a true monster among the muscle cars of the 70s. This car combined incredible power and aggressive design, but for some reason, Eastwood didn't take a liking to it. It's said that he drove it only a few times before deciding that the car was too aggressive for everyday driving. Perhaps it just didn't match his style. He always valued a balance between power and comfort. In the end, this legendary muscle car went to another owner, and Eastwood continued his search for the perfect car. When it comes to Clint Eastwood's collection of cars, everyone remembers the Gran Torino or his muscle cars. But few know that there was also room in his garage for a true retro masterpiece. One of such cars was the Duesenberg Model J, a luxurious American car produced in the 1930s. This car symbolized the ultimate luxury of its era, and Eastwood was one of the few lucky ones to own such a vehicle. However, he never showed it off and rarely mentioned it. Perhaps it was just his personal indulgence, something he valued exclusively for himself. Clint Eastwood always admired military equipment, which is not surprising given his roles in war films. Once, he acquired a Jeep Willys MB, the legendary off-road vehicle from World War II. This vehicle is not just a car, but a part of history, a symbol of the mobility of the American Army. This Jeep was not just a museum exhibit. Clint used it for trips around his ranch. He admired its simple design, reliability, and ruggedness. It was a vehicle that perfectly fit his philosophy. Minimum excess, maximum utility. As someone who always valued practicality, Eastwood couldn't do without a reliable truck. One of his first vehicles, once he became famous, was a Chevrolet 3100. Eastwood often drove this truck around his ranches. He transported hay, firewood, and everything needed for running the farm. Unlike expensive sports cars, this vehicle was simple, convenient, and incredibly reliable. It was a case where the vehicle became not just a means of transportation, but a true helper in everyday life. Most of the cars in Clint Eastwood's garage were used regularly. But there was one car that only appeared on the roads on special occasions. It was the Mercedes-Benz 600, a classic executive model designed for those who appreciate style and comfort. This car is associated with world leaders, movie and music stars, and it's no surprise that Eastwood chose it for his trips to premieres and social events. Unlike his SUVs and muscle cars, the Mercedes-Benz 600 was a symbol of elegance. He rarely appeared in public, but when he did, it emphasized Eastwood's status as one of the main legends of Hollywood.